Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Today we will talk about cosmology in a different aspect. We are not really thinking in terms of a cosmos, but we are talking about the different kinds of worlds, but in a different way, that is from an experiential point of view. The Buddha, when he spoke about the different spheres of existence, he spoke about the worlds from the experiential point of view, which means that how a person experiences the different world, how a person can see the different world or different kind of existence. So this is important to know. The Buddha divided the worlds into three kinds: the sensual worlds, the form worlds, and the formless worlds, or sensual existence, the form existence, and the formless existence. The sensual means that we experience pleasure and pain. The sensual worlds were divided into three kinds: the pleasure worlds, the pain worlds, and the mixed worlds. So the pain worlds were the nirayas. Niraya means that we don't gain anything there. That means we don't gain any pleasures. It's always a kind of loss because it's all pain. And there are times when the pain is more or the pain is less. So the less pain is seen as something pleasant, and the more pain is seen as more painful. So there are different kinds of worlds like that, about 10 kinds of nirayas the Buddha spoke of. But it is difficult to describe these different worlds because we have never experienced that. So we can only describe something that we have experienced or something similar to it. So the only experience that we can talk about is simply that it is painful. And of course the Buddha tried to use analogies to explain this, and we don't have to go into a great detail about the analogies. When talking about the pleasure worlds, the Buddha spoke of 6 kinds of deva lokas. Deva was the word for something like the angels. Deva, the best translation I find is angel rather than God. Very often people use the word God, but the word God has different meanings. So it's better to call the inhabitants of the celestial worlds as angels. So there are 6 kinds again according to the pleasure derived. So more pleasure and less pleasure. This is how we can describe these worlds. And there are 6 kinds of Devalokas. The first was called Chatur Maharajika. Those who live in the Chatur Maharajika means the 10 kingdoms, 4 kingdoms, not 10. The 4 kingdoms, but these are people who have been doing a lot of social service, human beings who have been interested in social service and doing good deeds, having good thoughts. Such people are born in these worlds. And then comes the Tavatimsa. Tavatimsa means 33. Somehow there is a story behind that to explain why it is called 33. But the important thing is that these are also devas who have been interested in social service, but of a higher degree. And they are more like a governing body, like the members of the parliament or something like that. They are mainly doing the administrative part of social service rather than the field work. Those who are in the 4 kingdoms, they are more like the field officers, field workers. And so there in the Tavatimsa, you find the chief as Sakra. Sakra is the name of the chief of that world. And beyond this, we find those who have been practicing good behavior, controlling their impulses to the extent of controlling their behavior control. These are the Yama gods, Yama Devaloka. Yama means they are mainly self-control. Then comes the Tusita world, where people who meditate and purify the mind to a great extent, they are reborn in the Tusita world, the world of contentment. They are contented with just a little. They are not going after pleasures to that extent. And they are happy because they are contented. Then we also have the Nimmana Rati. Nimmana Rati are devas who are interested in creative work. So those who purify the mind and at the same time like creative work, maybe in the form of painting or music or any other creative work, like poetry and maybe even writing and various other creative ways. They are more interested in creative work rather than just enjoying pleasures and pleasing the senses. Then comes the Paranimmita Vasavatti. Paranimmita Vasavatti is simply interested in appreciating other people's creations. So they are more interested in appreciating the creative work rather than doing creative work or creating things. So these are like the people who collect paintings or collect music and that sort of thing. They are interested in appreciating other people's creation rather than creating themselves. So that is the highest Devaloka. They are not so much going after sensual pleasures. When we speak about the mixed worlds, the human world is supposed to be a mixed world where we get both pleasure and pain. And there are some other mixed worlds like the Preta Lokas. The Pretas are, it's also a kind of spirit world where those who die but they are people who have too much attachment to things, and as a result they are reborn in these spirit worlds, but they are not really enjoying because they are of their attachment to things. And there you get a certain degree of pleasure but more pain than the human world, because there is the desire for things, but the desires are not satisfied. This is why they are called apaya. Apaya means just a little satisfaction in terms of getting what is needed. It's like a poor person who is able to get a little satisfaction, but not very much. So, apayas. So in this way, we have also the animal world where there is a little satisfaction but not so much satisfaction as in the human world. Human world you can get more satisfaction, but still there are deficiencies in the human world also. So these are the mixed worlds. So there are these three kinds of sensual worlds: the pain worlds, the pleasure worlds, and the mixed worlds. The next kind of world is the form world. The form world is a place where you experience different objects, but you don't get the pleasure or the pain. It's a neutral sensation, and you find happiness there rather than pleasure. So we have to distinguish between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is where we begin to experience pleasant sensations. Happiness is a state of mind, and that happiness comes from purity of mind. And so when the mind is purified, free from desires and hatreds and passions, lust, and free from all kinds of emotions, the mind is calm and tranquil, peaceful and happy. So there is this happiness experienced. But we experience at the same time objects. Objects like in what we see in the form of solids or liquids, or that is material objects. It can come in the form of gases and even in the form of subatomic particles like the what we call plasma. So that kind of subtle form of matter. Now in this we have the Brahma world. The Brahma world is really a very subtle form of matter, and we see objects in that way. We can see other people or other things in the world that we can experience. So the last of the material worlds, when we say material, we can also think in terms of energy, matter and energy. So energy also in different forms. So, but the lowest of the form worlds is the Brahma world, where you get a certain form of subtle matter. But when you go beyond the Brahma world, you get the Abhasara, which is simply the world of radiance, which is all energy rather than matter. And beyond the Abhasara is what is called the Subhakinna. Subha means it is pleasant in the sense of happiness. There is happiness there, experience, not pleasure as sensual pleasure. It's happiness, and that pleasantness of happiness is what is Subhakinna. And then you have the next form of the Rupa Loka is the Suddhavasa, the pure abodes, the purity of mind and the peace obtained, an experience of peace there, happiness. So these are the form worlds where partly it is physical, partly it is simply energy rather than matter. These are really people who meditate and gain the jhanas. The first jhana is corresponding with the Brahma world. The second jhana corresponds with the world of radiance, Abhasara. And the third jhana corresponds with the Subhakinna, the happy world. And Suddhavasa, the pure abodes, correspond with the fourth jhana. So when people have been able to go beyond the fourth jhana into the arupa jhanas or arupa samadhis, which are also called the ayatanas. Ayatanas, there you get the sphere of infinite space. So you get only infinite space. There is no object there, empty space. It's an empty world. It's an emptiness that is being appreciated there. No objects of any kind. It's when the mind is being emptied, that emptiness is very peaceful. It's a higher degree of happiness in that sense, the emptiness of the mind. And then you go even beyond that infinite space to infinite cognition. So there is the infinite cognition in the sense that you experience the cognition, but you don't experience any object like empty space. Empty space is also a kind of object there, but not material objects or physical objects. Is an emptiness, but the emptiness becomes the object there in this infinite space. But here you don't have any object like that. What you experience is simply the process of cognition only. So the infinite cognition there. So vinyanancha, vinyanam ananta vinyan, akasananchayatana vinyananchayatana. This is vinyananchayatana. And then you empty the mind beyond that when you become aware of just nothing, the nothingness, the akinchanyayatana, which is there is nothing, the experience of nothingness. But in experiencing nothingness, there is an experience, the object there is simply nothingness, and nothingness is being experienced. It is seen as a higher degree of peace, but it is the nothingness, an emptiness. Beyond this, this was really the level that Alara Kalama and Uddakarama Putta were experiencing. But the teacher of Uddakarama Putta was Uddakarama. He had experienced something beyond this, which was the usually translated as neither perception nor non-perception. Neva sanya na sanyayatana. The sanya was really sensation in the modern way of saying it, absence of sensations. But here it's neither the presence of sensation nor the absence. So it's like the threshold of cognition, where you can't say you have any kind of sensation, and you can't say you don't have any kind of sensation. And then beyond this is the cessation of sensation and perception. The sanya vedita nirodha, which is what the Buddha achieved ultimately. He went beyond the teachers at that point, which was the cessation of sensation and perception. But that is not any kind of existence there. The ultimate existence was that neither sensation nor no sensation. So in speaking about these different kinds of worlds, we just described the sensual worlds, the form worlds, and the formless worlds. And this is how we can speak about the different kinds of worlds from an experiential point of view, where we are not speaking about a material or spatial thing. That means when we speak about something, we can always ask the question, where is it? and when is it? When we ask the question, where is it? We are speaking about space. Where in space? When we ask, when is it? We are asking for time, the time. So, when we begin to speak about these worlds, we have to free our mind of space and time, because space and time is also a human experience. So we always think in terms of space and time. But when we go on to these other kinds of spheres of existence, we don't experience space and time in that sense. In some worlds, not all worlds. The space and time is mainly experienced in the sensual worlds and the form worlds, but when we come to the formless worlds, like empty space, we are not locating any object in space. We can only speak about space, and space as infinite. So we can't measure that space because it is without bounds, no limits, no boundaries. Whenever we speak of an object, we can speak about the boundary in terms of length and breadth and height. Those are all boundaries. But when it is empty space, there is no boundary to talk about. So, and when we talk about time, how long? Again, we talk about a past, a present, and a future. So here, we are not able to talk about past, present, future, other than how long are we going to be in that kind of experience. So, when we enter these states in the form of jhanas or ayatanas, it's all the same as being in that world itself. There is no big difference between being in the world and experiencing that state of. So when a person dies, having experienced that, that person will be living in that state. So this is very difficult to imagine and conceive from a human point of view. But still, the Buddha has been trying to explain this as far as possible. So we can speak about these different kinds of worlds in this way, but not in terms of space and time. So I think we have, to a great extent, discussed the different kinds of worlds that a person can be born in the form of sensual worlds, the form worlds, and the formless worlds. And I hope I have made myself clear, and thank you for listening. May you all be well and